So call to order. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Wednesday, November 15th electronic meeting of the Airport Advisory Committee. Meeting's being held remotely, so we'll conduct it similar to in-person meeting. Public comment will be available via phone only. To speak, you already know, you're already online. The information's in the agenda about how to get connected. As we go through the public speaking section, I'll go through exactly how to connect. Yeah, that's good. So let's move on to roll call. In compliance with the requirements of the Open Meeting Act, the airport manager will call on each voting member in remote attendance. Should answer with present, include where they are, calling from, municipality and state is fine. This information will be in the minutes going forward.
Okay, Member Hall.
Present in Ann Arbor.
Member Ferris.
Present Ann Arbor.
Member McNicholas.
Present Ann Arbor.
Member Perry.
Present, Scioto Township, Washtenaw County.
Member Watson.
Present in Ann Arbor.
And Member Briggs.
Here in Ann Arbor.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Outstanding. And I'll apologize. I'll probably cough a ton in here, which makes it good that we're not meeting together. Next up is approval of the agenda. There's a discussion about that earlier. So if we're looking at changes or.
This is Mark. I saw the email exchange under new business. We'd like to readdress the agricultural use, if we may.
Any discussion? Let's entertain a motion to add that to the new business item agenda.
Yeah, second, Mr. Chair. You need a second.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay.
And all in favor of that, adding that agenda item, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So be it. So we'll add that in the new agenda items, or excuse me,
Greg?
new business.
Greg?
Yeah.
Might I add another item to that business agenda? I was wondering if we could have a short discussion about unleaded av fuel at the airport.
Sure. Any discussion on that or? Okay, just second by Mr. Perry. All in favor of adding unleaded av fuel to our new business items? Say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So be it. Now, with those two new items in there, look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor of the agenda item with the two additional items added?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Good deal. Okay. Now looking for approval of the minutes from the meeting in September.
I'll move to approve this. I'll second.
Outstanding. All in favor of approving the minutes from September 20 as it is, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Approval of minutes. Outstanding. Next up is public comment. This opportunity for people to speak for 3 minutes. You can call the phone number, which probably already are online, and the meeting ID is there. For Matt to pick the caller, you just need to raise your hand, and then he'll call out at the last 3 digits on your phone that we see on the screen. That to raise your hand, just do -9 on most, or not -9, but flat 9, the Yeah, I can't even go now. On your phone.
Star.
Yeah.
You're almost there.
Star. The thing above the 8. Oh, it's not even that. It's on a phone. Yes. *9 will get you in. And then just move to a quiet place and so we can hear real well. And then state your name and the address at the beginning of your comments so we know where you're from.
Okay. Got the caller ending in 340. If you want to go ahead and unmute, you can speak.
Hello, this is David and Nathan McCullough here with Broadview Farms. Our address is at 4100 Stone School Road here in Ann Arbor. I just wanted to let you know that we are present. We'd be open to any discussion. I see you guys added the agricultural use to the agenda. During that time, if you guys would like us to speak, we'd be more than happy to entertain any questions that you might have for us. We appreciate you guys reconsidering this agenda item, and we look forward to some discussion. And we'll be here at the end of the meeting as well for any additional comments or questions. We can make answers at that time if that would be so advised. Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment? See anybody else up with their hand raised, Mr. Chair? So I think that's it for public comment.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for your comment. Excuse me. Next up is correspondence. A couple items in there. Pat?
Yeah, the first item is the airport operations for through September that was provided in your packet. Again, as you see, it's kind of been pretty consistent. We're at about just under 5% less operations for the first for the first 9 months of the year compared to last year. So, you know, it's consistently been down through the summer activity and those type of things. Not earth-shattering, but noticeable. So, any questions on the operation numbers? Okay. Next item is the fuel usage report. And again, similar through the end of September, we're down about 5.5% from last year. And while historically operations and fuel usage don't necessarily track here at Ann Arbor, you know, or at least for this situation, they are carrying about the same amount for the first 9 months of this year compared to the same period of last year. Any questions on the fuel usage report? Next one is hangar occupancy. This is the report through the end of October, actually. And again, we're at 100% occupancy, and we're up to 43 individuals on the waiting list as of the end of October. And that number actually has grown as of today. I just added number 44 to today's list. So continue to have a healthy desire to be flying and flying it out of Ann Arbor. Any questions on the hangar occupancy report?
Matt, how is your ramp occupancy?
It's better. It's higher than it traditionally has been, but not. I mean, I always tell people when I talk about hangar occupancies that we do have ramp space available. So we're definitely not. We're not crowded on the ramp. You know, with tenants and those things, you know, that are tie down tenants. So definitely space available there. But you know, most people or many people, you know, don't want to leave their aircraft out on the ramp, understandably so. But it is an option that's available for somebody if they get desperate. We're seeing a lot of these people that we're seeing now are pre-planning. I mean, a lot of the people, we don't require you to have an aircraft at the time of application. You would need one at the time of occupancy of a hangar. but at application, we don't require that. So a lot of the people, probably 8 out of the last 10 or 12 are tenants that are just, they know it's tough to get a hangar. They want to get an aircraft at some point, and so they're getting their application in, even though they know it's going to be, a couple of years out probably.
Thanks.
Other questions on the hangar occupancy? Last item is just an updated membership roster. We did add a new member to replace Teresa's position, Alex Arts, who's a longtime tenant at the airport, and I think he's retired from U of M, but he has been appointed by council. So thank you, our council member representatives, for your assistance in that. And unfortunately, Alex had a pre-commitment when he was appointed. He had a prior commitment for this evening. We did get an opportunity to sit down and have a couple of hour meeting at the airport recently, just to get him up to speed and go over stuff. So the roster just reflects this is really a copy for you guys. You have contact information and general information about the other members, though it is publicly available. Any questions on the roster? All right, Mr. Chair, that's all I have under the correspondence.
Thank you, Matt. Next up, back to you on the airport manager report. Yeah.
Need to take a drink of water, Mr. Chair. So update on the EA. So this is a fun one to be able to say. So the EA, the environmental assessment, is complete. We actually have a FONSI, a finding of no significant impact, that has been signed by MDOT and the FAA. And so the last step that we are working on is publishing what's called a notice of availability, just to generally let the public know that the EA is done and it's available for review. So we are working on that, putting the language together for it. FAA is reviewing it. We expect that with the Thanksgiving weekend coming up, we will probably wait until after that, probably the weekend after that, to publish it in the paper. We'll be providing copies of the document and if everyone's in agreement from the recipients, we'll be providing copies of the document to the same locations that we had the draft EA at. Matt, if the township is still willing to take one, I'd appreciate that. So the township, the city clerk's office, the airport, the public downtown branch of the public library. It'll be available on the website, the city's website, and then we'll do some social media blasting out through our communications office as well, that the notice of availability is out there. Typically, there's no response or review comment like there was for the draft EA. This is just letting you know it's out there. The copies we'll leave out in place, like at the library and stuff. We'll leave them out there for 30 to 45 days. We're required for 30 days. We'll leave them out there a little longer. One of the issues that's taken a little bit of time on is how to disseminate the document, because the full document with all the comments and response to comments and appendices is nearly 3,600 pages long. So not a practical, it's a heck of a binder, or multiple binders, if you can imagine. Matt, I'll let you know that the attorney that either the township or the neighborhood association hired was responsible for about almost 2,500 pages of that stuff. So whoever was paying for them, if they were paying by the page, they got their money's worth. So, so the full document will be available online, though it will be broken up by chapter. So it's actually, the document itself as a sole document is over 300 megabytes in size. And so we are breaking it down by chapter and appendices, which will be a little bit more of a pain for people to download, but it also, for those who may not have super fast internet with a super fast computer, it makes it accessible to those persons. The documents that will be, the copies that will be, are bound and will be provided to the sites that I mentioned before. Those will include the EA and the FONSI, and we will make flash drives of the full document available. So like Matt, when I bring to the clerk's office, you'll have, you know, the 150-page EA and the FONSI, and then we'll provide 10 flash drives in the back that have the full document. So if people want to read all the appendices in response to comments and those type of things, they can just take a copy of that. And if we need to replenish those, we'll make more copies and replenish those supporting documents. But it just wasn't practical to expect somebody to review a 3,600-page document sitting at the library. So the FAA was in agreement that that's an appropriate way to do that. But again, if somebody does want to just download the entire document, it'll be available for that purpose. So like I said, probably the first weekend in December. Again, we didn't want to run it over the holiday weekend. So probably the first week in December is when it'll be published in the paper, and then rolled out. We'll get it out to the jurisdictions where we're going to deposit copies the end of the week prior to that, so they're available once the publication goes out. Any questions on that? It's only been 15 and a half years. All right, so other items that we have, got a fun one to share with you. So last Friday, we had, if you're familiar with the Shinola Watch Company in Detroit, they were out at the airport filming for a commercial. Working in conjunction with one of our vintage aircraft owners. So we were excited to see once that becomes available. We requested to get a copy of it. They did provide. We use a commercial use permit process for those type of activities. So there's a fee, insurance, and other type of obligations that they have to agree to, which we got taken care of ahead of time. And but yeah, so it was always neat to see that type of thing for the airport. So couple of things going on. As you know, as I reported previously, we updated the Pilot's Lounge. We have switched our TV providers in there. We got rid of the Dish Network and went to streaming TV. So both at the TV in the terminal building, the main lobby, and the Pilot's Lounge. So it's again just a little nicer setup for those of our users who take advantage of those locations at the airport. And that was all available because of the new Wi-Fi in the building that was put in this summer. And on the flip side, it also reduced our cost. The YouTube TV on 2 TVs is half the price of Dish Network on 1 TV. So nice cost saving for the airport. Also, just approved a purchase order. We're going to replace the flooring in the terminal building on the main level. The carpeting that's there in the main part of the terminal in the break area, and the carpeting that's in the 4 offices, my office and the 3 tenant offices. And so we're going to be carrying, and the tenant offices over by, the car rental and Solar Aviation, we're going to carry the LVP, the luxury vinyl planking that we did in their customer service areas. We're going to carry that into their offices. And the main part of the terminal will still have carpeting, new carpeting. And then on the area where the kind of the coffee pot is, and that the lounge area, break area, we'll also put LVP in over there, just because occasionally food and drinks gets spilled over there. So again, just to kind of refresh and clean up the terminal a little bit more. FAA, I guess it was last month now. The FAA, they have a couple of weather stations, the SAW and the ASOS out at the airfield, and the completed graveling a trail out there. They actually used one of the old runways from the early configuration of the airport. So they graveled a trail to be able to get out to their equipment in all sorts of weather. So we completed that. I think it was late October that they wrapped that up. So that's squared away. Make it easier for them. They've gotten their staff, and that's not Chad's staff, but the staff who maintain that have gotten stuck out there before. So I'm sure they'll be happy to not have to worry about that. And then the last item on my list is the MDOT has been, I mentioned to the committee a number of months ago, they are doing, looking for what they call a multimodal projects. They're looking at doing 1 or 2 pilot projects, integrating, looking at airports and looking at ways to make airports more sustainable, to prep them for transition to electric aircraft, to, again, continue efforts towards electric charging for vehicles, not only aircraft, but cars, those type of things. And so we were one of 42 airports that had applied to be considered for this program. And we were shortlisted. There are, I think, six airports now that we shortlisted. They have a project team coming out along with a consultant who's working with them on this project, coming out to the airport to do an on-site visit on Friday. So we'll be meeting with them and sharing with them. They are anticipate doing 1 or 2 airports in the state of Michigan, probably a commercial services airport and a general aviation airport is what I'm hearing. And the idea behind this is if you are the short list, then they're also going to be looking at how do we make that conversion, what are the needs, and the expectation is that they have grant funding to be able to help assist the airports in that conversion in these pilot programs. So our benefit, for the benefit for us is it's really taking it as a place we were going anyways. And if we can, become one of the pilot airports and be able to pick up some grant funding to help offset the costs of some of this transition, would be beneficial for the airport. So, but again, at this point, we've made the short list, and we'll see how we go from there. That is all I have, unless anybody has questions at this point. Okay.
Thank you, Matt. Next up is committee reports. Chief Harshberger, anything from Pittsfield this evening?
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I have nothing new for this month. It's been quiet.
Excellent. The other one on committee reports is a committee that hasn't done anything in this past month, was the Discovery area. It's still on the list to pull up and to start the next steps. I think last time I spoke, I did say something. I know Matt and I are looking at a few things as to ensure that any projects at the airport were kind of aligned with where we're trying to go, especially in that area over by the terminal, but it's mostly talk. It hasn't gone to anything else. Any questions on those two? Nothing?
Greg?
Yes, sir.
If we could back it up just a moment.
Yeah.
Matt, in your report, you talked about the charging stations, which I support. That's a great idea. What is the status of the sustainability project with solar at the wellheads and over in the tower area and wherever else?
Yeah, so that's been interesting, an interesting project. So just as a reminder, what Mark's referring to is the city's Office of Sustainability and Innovation, and we've presented stuff to this group before, is looking at a total of 4 solar sites at the airport. One up in the Northwest Tees, which would be kind of between the Northwest Tees and the snow removal equipment building. The second one would be across from AvFuel, which would tie into the terminal building. The one in the Northwest Tees would actually tie into the electric feed for the Northwest Tees. And then the third one is a small one over, kind of at the end of Delta Row, in that little triangular piece north of the road. And that would tie into the electric feed for Alpha Bravo Charlie. And then there's a larger one out by the southwest corner by the well houses, that would tie into the steer farm wells there. So they've actually awarded the project, and they ran into some issues with the contractor in regards to some changes. And then the most recent issue is they had to have some special language because of some of the funding they're using is federal funding. And council members Watson or Briggs, if I get this wrong, feel free to correct me. But so what they did is, and this is not just our projects, but there's multiple projects throughout the city that were part of this contract. So what they've done recently, or it's going to council, I think, is they are splitting the contracts up to individual sites. The airport will be one contract, but they're splitting the contracts up so they can tie the ones that have federal funding. They can write specific contractual requirements tied to those contracts. The ones that are using other sources of funding, millage money, those type of things, won't have the same contractual requirements as the federal ones. And so I don't think that's gone to council. I'm not sure if it's on the agenda for the 20th.
It's on the 20th, yep.
It's on the 20th, okay. So the expectation is that if council approves that on the 20th, then they'll go ahead and move into the next phase, which will be getting the contract signed and getting stuff on order, additional engineering, those type of things. Did that answer your question, Mark?
Yes, thanks.
So still in the works.
Any other questions?
Greg, I have a question for you. I saw the picture you sent with the artistic work at your airport in Iowa, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great idea. I was just wondering, is there any movement with us as far as maybe delving into some mural artistic work at our airport?
I'll tell you that at the pancake breakfast, I had set up something about the discovery area and met, I don't have her name right in front of me, someone that is on the Arts Council. And so we weren't talking necessarily about that, but we're just talking about other things that if we build this area up, what there might be available, because always looking either in arts or education in that kind of gray area. And I did make one contact with her, but I haven't gone back to follow up because I thought that would be a good one. I knew the airport manager there it was in Iowa City, and just chatted with them about exactly how it all got started and where it came from. And mostly was granted from their kind of county area-wide art funding agency. They had to put together kind of an art council of sorts, but that's where theirs came from and how they got it. It's just something they pushed and got enough grant, and then you saw. And it was also tied to their 100th anniversary. We got a few more years, but it's still something we could start thinking about getting ahead of that.
Yeah, I thought it was a really great project.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it was pretty well received, and it's on an area too. It's a large roaded area to just a bunch of hangars, so you can see there's a bunch. It's kind of boring unless you put something up there. So yeah, I think we'll definitely push for something like that. Thanks for asking. Anything else on the committees? So next up, there's nothing. We'll move on to unfinished business. And the first on that is the noise concerns and the brochure.
Yeah, so I sent you guys out. You may not have seen it because I set it out like an hour and a half ago. I was hoping to get an update. I had a rough draft from the designer of the brochure. I had sent back edits and comments and some changes, and I was hoping to have that back before our meeting today so I could send that out. But did not have it. I'm actually meeting with her tomorrow to go over those edits and changes. But so I guess what I would say, if you want to take a look at that and look at it not so much in layout or the map graphic is still incorrect. It needs to show the pattern traffic or the actual pattern. And then we were going to put a sign inset in the lower right corner of the map graphic. But look at it for the content, especially the pilots out there, and just make sure that it's kind of consistent with the expectation. And I expect to have, since I'm meeting with her tomorrow to go over the edits that I had proposed, I'm hoping that, well, with Thanksgiving coming up, it'll probably be after Thanksgiving, but hoping to have a revision back to email out to everybody for your review. And again, the idea here is we're working on the brochure first. And then once we have the graphic put together and the content, we'll tweak that a little bit for a Jeppesen binder. For those of you who are not pilots, that is a binder that many pilots use, and that has all sorts of wonderful flying information about airports and those things. And when we had done this previously, we had provided it out, made available Jeppesen binder copies as well. And then lastly, we'll do up some posters. Those will have a little different content, but the idea again is distribution to the flight schools, to various businesses in the airport. Again, just getting information about that program distributed out. So that's kind of the process that we're going through, and I think we're close. Once we get the brochure done, the other two will come very quickly.
Matt, what is there going to be any signage change at the departure end of the runway so that it's like right in your face what you need to do?
Yeah, we talked about, and Mark had provided us suggested before, and that's actually what we're looking at. That'll actually be two things. That'll be shown on the graphic inset, so you'll be able to tie the two. It'll make a natural connection between the two, the noise abatement program, and then we'll actually replace the signs that are there now with the new signs and with the new verbiage, which is, as opposed to a general, hey, follow noise abatement procedures. We're gonna, that specifically had some directions on, attaining a certain elevation before you're going crosswind and those type of things. So that would be the plan.
One more question about that. Is like I'm not sure I know anybody that uses a Jeppesen binder anymore, but
I know it is old.
is there? I know that we had talked about putting it in the but we never talked about possibly putting it in ForeFlight as a comment. I don't know if that would cost anything to put it in there, but I know that. Yeah, I think that that might be helpful too. Because I don't know anybody that doesn't use ForeFlight.
Melanie, just to add to that, Melanie hit on my question about the signs, and so I appreciate all of the dialogue and all the things. Again, I know I've said this before, but Matt, I appreciate your work on this and the committee for all the things that you're trying to do to address the issues that we've been seeing in Pittsville Township. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Let me ask you, for the pilots out there, is it a waste of money for a Jeppesen binder?
Well, I can't say I use ForeFlight like Melody suggests, but I also print a paper backup for my knee pad. And I know a number of older pilots do that because in case your battery goes down, you got it right there, pull it out. And the old one was in there. The things that I have, Matt, were, I don't mean to rush away from your question on Jeppesen, but the first one is it necessary? Maybe that's the wrong way to word it. Is it appropriate to also examine the crosswind runway with respect to noise abatement? I know that those are tail draggers and and maybe some vintage planes, but is it necessary to have some kind of a signage down there to say, hey, be respectful of everybody else? That was one thing. The second thing that I was looking through the brochure, and it was a great first draft, by the way. I like the look of it. Is that logo that's on there?
The one that has the big jet on it?
Yeah.
Can
we be a little bit more sensitive to?
I've sent back to the designer, letting her know that that's really not indicative of the type of aircraft that we have. And I sent her a general image of a nice little twin engine outline of a nice little twin propeller engine aircraft, and suggested she work with that as her design. So yeah, already noted and addressed.
So you can go back to Jefferson now. Sorry for.
Yeah, just other comments maybe from the other pilots.
Yeah, no Jefferson. That's a waste. I think.
Yeah.
And Mark, I don't ask my students, what if your battery dies anymore? They say, well, if my iPad battery dies, I'll pull out my phone.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, well, I appreciate the feedback on that.
Oh, Melanie, you're on mute.
If you had it in ForeFlight, you could also print that out from ForeFlight.
Right.
So you're not restricted to like a Jefferson thing, which just people are using more, I don't think.
I do have one concern, if I can, about the signage at the runway. If to be useful, and I don't know if this makes sense, but to be useful, it should be like instructions for what to say to the tower controller if you want to follow the noise abatement departure. If we call the tower and ask for clearance to take off, and we state a direction of flight, that's what they want to know, we've sort of entered into an agreement with the controller, is the way I look at it, that's the route we're going to take to leave their airspace. And so if we're going to do anything other than go directly west, directly east, directly south, when we reach a turning altitude, I think we need to tell them, like, I want to take off and fly south for about 2 miles and then turn west. That I defer to Chad, but I think that the controller, when we get our clearance and accept our clearance, we're reaching an understanding with the controller how we're gonna fly in their airspace. And so I see that as a complicating factor for pilots voluntarily following these noise abatement departure routes. I think you gotta square it with the tower before you take off. And I think if you're going to have signage, you might want to be explicit about how to be productive in doing that. But I don't know the answer.
Dad, I don't know if you were listening in on that or not.
I was. I guess more clearly, what is your direct question? I agree with your statement, but are you asking me, like, what's the way to communicate that with the controller? What's the expectation with the controller?
No, it's a little different than that. It's we're talking about this. There's signage at least at 2-4 and at 6, saying, be a good, and I'm paraphrasing, be a good neighbor, follow the published noise abatement procedures. And the published noise abatement procedures, which are in the pamphlet that we're talking about, specify routes and altitudes to depart the airport area to minimize the noise impact on the neighbors. And it's a route that's other than a direct route out of the airspace. And so I'm suggesting that we need that the the instructions or request to follow noise abatement procedures falls a little short. It falls short of telling us how to do it. Because I think that if I get clearance to take off to the west, then I'm sort of agreed to go directly west as soon as I reach a turning altitude. And I don't know exactly how to coordinate with the tower controller to tell them I want to take the noise abatement route out of the airspace. So we're talking about signage at the runway.
Okay, I understand. So, I mean, ultimately, what we're even trying to do with the noise abatement is, and you're well aware, I'm just kind of summarizing, the voluntary program, if we can comply, we do. If the tower is busy, I mean, I've said it before, it's harder to do that. I mean, if you're departing, you're saying, hey, I'm looking to go westbound. If you're plus or minus 30 degrees of westbound, the controller's not really nitpicking that, right? But if you say, you know, I want to go westbound and the turn's completely unexpected, or the turn is late, or you're at 3 miles off departure end and now you're turning westbound, those are the things that would matter more. I think there was also an altitude in there as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the controller probably isn't nitpicking the altitude unless he's expecting you to turn crosswind, right? That's when that would come up. So I don't know. We could,
Right.
I mean, ultimately, this is something I can brief the controllers on, that, hey, these are the noise abatement, but at the same time, there's going to be a time and a place where, you know, the pattern's busy and your slot westbound is now. You know, I've got another aircraft coming in from the north. I've got one coming in from the south, and I need you to turn westbound. So that's where the issue comes in. Now, where it doesn't come in is if the tower's closed. If the tower's closed and those same noise abatement procedures are in place, awesome. You know, fly your plane, be safe, and, you know, be a good neighbor. And I think that's a lot easier. You're talking 1 or 2 in the pattern at night on average when there's aircraft. So it's a little bit easier to do that. But yeah, during the day, in general, if we've got 5 aircraft on frequency, it's going to be a lot harder to do that. Overall goal of air traffic is safety, right? Over everything is safety. So what's the safest way to get you westbound? It might be right now. And that's where the problem comes up. So as a pilot, I mean, you can always ask for it. You know, I'm trying to follow a voluntary noise abatement procedure, like to depart runway 12 and do the following. Okay, I've got your request. And then from there, it's on air traffic.
Yeah, and I'm just brainstorming here, but you know, if there was some agreed upon shorthand, I'd like to, I'm holding short of 6. I'd like to depart to the west following noise abatement. Could that be meaningful to a controller without my describing the route and the altitudes where I want to turn? Something like that. I'm trying to imagine complying with the sign, you know, or having a good sign, and also making it efficient. I'm trying to imagine complying.
So
yeah.
Number one thing,
these two, the signage and, you know, and what you're trying to do, and the amount of activity and what the controllers are going to be doing and those things. Yeah, it's
so this would be awesome if we could do this. Ultimate goal, if we could do something similar to, we'll have a green route and a red route as an example. Now this is snowballing, right? I'm thinking out loud. There's a lot of processes involved to get this approved. But if we could have something similar to this, where we have, and it would be published in the voluntary noise abatement procedure, what the red route is, what the green route is. A pilot can show up to runway 12 and say, hey, November 1, 2, 3, 4 off runway 12, we're looking for the green route. All right. That route will have an altitude climb out suggestion, and it will have a turn suggestion. Now, here's the thing. Most of these aircraft are VFR, so I can't make it like a standard instrument departure. It can't be a SID. I can't say
I
at this point do this. But it could be an overall recommendation using VFR points that you will fly off the departure of run 12 at the following, you know, building. You will make a left turn to whatever route. So it's a stretch. I've seen it with pipelines in our airspace. Actually, there's similar things for pipeline aircraft that are VFR. But I mean, that would be, I think, an easy way to make it really clear. If, you know, together we could come up with what those routes look like. I can try to get air traffic on board with that, and then that alleviates it. Short of that, though, I can brief there every single day. I'm putting out briefing items. I can do a verbal briefing with the controllers on what the voluntary noise abatement procedures are, and try to get them to understand what that is if you say that. But it's going to be a learning curve. I mean, they're going to have to learn it. What do they expect? What do you do when you're flying your airplane versus what does somebody else do for the exact same thing in a different aircraft, whether it be better performance, lesser performance, or less experience? You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have variations every single time, especially in the GA world.
Yeah, I'd say, for what it's worth, instead of hijacking this meeting, if you want to, if somebody wants to come up with a procedure with ATC, I'll volunteer myself and the Michigan Flyers to come up with it, to pilot it, so to speak, and see how it goes and tune it. I could imagine as a voluntary procedure, we say, ready for departure, request noise abatement procedures, and ATC says, unable, follow standard procedures. You know, it could be, I'm looking for a succinct but well understood conversation that could happen.
Understand.
But anyway, that's enough for now, I think.
Can I just mention one thing too, as far as the noise abatement goes? If you're doing an IFR departure, it's usually fly runway heading and climb to whatever altitude. So there's no noise abatement there as far as going straight. And I'm just saying that, you know, I know this mostly VFR that can follow these procedures, but if you're on an IFR flight plan, that there's really no choice in how you want to fly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think those are good. But I think that, and Matt, you know, our start is here, and then we're going to have to build on this and make it better as we go forward. I think, Fred, I appreciate that offer of help in that, just to see how we can push that forward. Excellent. Any more comments? And thanks, Matt, except for the big giant Boeing jet. I think we're okay there.
Mark Perry was going to pick that up. So.
Okay, next up under unfinished business is airport rules and regulations update. I know we had a subcommittee started and to talk about that.
Yeah, so the subcommittee had its first meeting in the last week, I think it was, and basically it was just kind of a review of the current documents, a little bit of peer review on what some of the other GA towered airports have and those things. Trying to get a feel for the goals of the document. Talked about some specific issues. So not a lot of, just more of kind of a general introductory of the document and some of the things we're trying to accomplish. I'm going to try to get the group together again, maybe sometime in December, and be able to dive into things a little more. So first meeting and moving forward. So.
Excellent. New business. So I think, and see if this sounds where you were thinking, Matt, and also the committee, is we have one item, and then we'd add F2, which would be the discussion of the farming activity inside the fence, and yep. F3 would be the unleaded fuel discussion. That sounds good. Just because this one will probably go quicker than the other two. So next up is F1. That's the advisory committee schedule for 2024. Yes.
Yeah, so I've presented you with the dates and just carried forward the same regular meeting date that we've been meeting for a number of years at same time. The way this is, what I presented there, these would all be electronic meetings. And then, I also just kind of updated a memo that I had shared with you at the last meeting regarding some flexibility. If the majority of the committee were interested in doing some in-person meetings, City Council has authorized up to 4 in-person meetings per year for kind of our level or our type of commission. And if we have an interest in doing that, that's fine. If we don't, that's fine. Keep in mind that if we do an in-person meeting, The members have to be in person. You can't participate as a member. You can't participate remotely for an in-person meeting. So we would require attendance at that meeting if you can make it. And then and I'm hoping if we decide to do it, I'm hoping to know that tonight, because it just makes, we've got to do the annual meeting publication and those things soon, and it's easier to know if we're going to do any in-person meetings, and if so, which dates. But again, if we're not going to do any, that's fine as well. So it's really open for discussion for the committee.
Matt, existing city ordinance rules, whatever the open meetings we look to, is it permissible to have a special meeting in person? In other words, schedule them all online, but can you call a special meeting that you need to meet in person?
Yeah, you can, as long as we provide the appropriate legal notification. So basically, a couple of days in advance, we would just need to post the meeting, and we would post the location that it's an in-person meeting at the terminal, the terminal conference room, that type of thing. So, yeah, if we needed to hold a special meeting, we would make that determination. When the decision is made to hold a special meeting, we'd make that determination as part of the publication if it's going to be in person or remote.
Okay.
And Matt, if we did or chose to, like for the subcommittees, those meetings could be however they need to be conducted, because there's not a quorum from the committees.
Yeah, those can be remote or in person, and we've done both during the last couple of years.
Gotcha.
I wonder if there might be interest in having the first meeting of the year be in person as a way to sort of connect and for all of us to meet each other in person and make some of those connections, but then proceed to the virtual meetings for the rest of them. I know there's a certain ease to meeting this way for sure, and allows for greater travel and less planning ahead on schedules and things like that. But it would be nice to at least connect once in the year with everybody.
Build relationships.
I think that's a really good idea. Just there is a lot of value to meeting face to face and shaking hands and eyeball to eyeball, but then it's gonna hurt our attendance if we can't have the conveniences.
But in January, I don't know about the weather. I don't know if that's the best time to try to meet in person.
That is the challenge. You don't quite know what January in Michigan looks like, but we've been somewhat lucky in the snowstorm in recent years. But nothing like
Well, let's deal with the quick ones. Are the dates, the proposed dates, which continues to be the third Wednesday of the month, are those okay? Okay.
Okay with me.
So then the question really is, do we want to have any or which ones in person?
I think it's reasonable to have at least one in person, face to face. I'm indifferent on which month it is. It makes sense to have it on the first month because you start a new year out right. So
that is
that too.
Yeah, and it is.
We've had our big snowstorms in April the last 2 years.
Such a pragmatist.
This is November, so we could have it tomorrow.
I know, Greg, just a note on my part. I'm going to be out of the country January, February, and March, so I won't be able to go to any of those meetings. Sorry.
Well, then you don't have to worry about the weather on January.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I just mentioned it. I know.
I guess it
For everybody else.
Where out of country, but hopefully in January it's not someplace colder. So.
Well, I'm going to Africa.
Yeah. Oh. You have to report on the aviation in Africa. I think that's what.
Oh yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of plane rides over there, so I'll let you know.
I'm going to miss the March meeting, and I like the idea of exactly one of our meetings being in person, and I suggest the May 15th meeting.
I suggest the May 15th meeting too.
that a motion and a second? Or do we want to continue discussion?
I move that we resolve to have our May 15th meeting in person.
I second.
Right. All in favor of having our one in-house, show up face-to-face meeting on the 15th this year? All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Outstanding. Okay.
All right, we'll go ahead and get the meeting schedule put together with the one in-person meeting noted, and I'll try to remember to make sure I send out reminders to everybody that this month we're meeting in person. So
Outstanding. So yeah, next up is our first of our two agenda items, F2, which will be discussions on the within the fence farming decision we made back in May. I think we're going to allow, I think David's still on, to have audio in that, Matt, and so he could be part of the discussion. I think the one thing on that is maybe we make sure that we scope this item to what we're trying to do. And my thought, and Erica and Mark, I think, came with their push the motion, was that we're trying to tonight decide if we want to revisit that decision that we made in May. We don't have to decide what we're going to do in the sense of if we do decide to revisit it, the outcome. But I wanted to see, I think, and Erica, you correct me if that's okay, that the scope would fit into, do we feel that we want to go back and look at the decision that we made in May, if that sounds like a good scoping, I guess, of the item.
Yes, that makes sense to me.
Okay. Then the next one, I don't know if we just start off and maybe Matt, of course, I didn't talk to you about this part, but kind of remind us where we are from what we did, kind of what we discussed in May and where we came to, and then we can move forward from that.
yeah, so just in general, we had provided, actually going back even a previous month in March, we had provided the committee with some different options for changing or not changing agricultural use inside the airport. And this was really a result of a combination of we'd had a deer strike the previous October. We've had received some complaints regarding the farming activity, more so at harvesting time from tenants. And then also as part of the wildlife hazard assessment that was done as part of the EA. And so the committee in May decided to eliminate farming inside the fenced-in area. And as part of that, we had talked about whatever change we make, if we make a change, would be revenue neutral. So that was done, and the cost of that, the estimated cost of that was the equivalent of a 1.85% rate increase for the T hangars. And so that T hanger rate went into effect in July 1st. We did get some feedback at our July meeting from the McCullough family, who are the farmers that have for many years farmed that property. And then some additional information was provided in the September meeting, and we did have some discussion. They presented during public hearing, as well as we amended the agenda to talk about wildlife management, and agricultural activity was part of that discussion. No action to change anything was done in July or September, and then so that brings us up to speed, I think, on where we're at now.
Excellent. I think Erica brought it up. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the willingness to add it as a conversation topic tonight. And I missed the wildlife management conversation that happened in September, because this meeting always bumps into my housing commission meeting, which starts at 6. So I jumped. But I did listen to the conversation this afternoon, so I'm caught up on that. And as I've been listening to some of the communications that have come in from the McCullough family and reading some of the feedback there, and also digging in again to some of the previous materials that we'd had accessible to us, like the 2019 wildlife management report and those recommendations. It's just raised some questions for me. Perhaps I am the only one here who has those questions, and this conversation is quick. But to kind of share where I'm at in this, certainly the wildlife management conversation of last month, there was a discussion around sort of the desire to address the deer that were on site, but sort of what the impacts might be to, Matt went through that conversation around kind of what the different grasses that the airport might use to address that. But digging in a little bit, again, and this certainly got mentioned last month as well, but into that wildlife report, the recommendations are pretty clear from USDA around sort of what is actually going to be effective at addressing the deer on site, and that is addressing the fence. So, the first recommendation says proper fencing is the best way of keeping deer off of aircraft movement areas. It goes on to say, well, carrying out an aggressive culling program might provide some relief to this problem. In the absence of a deer-proof perimeter fence, it's merely delaying the inevitable, the potential for more negative interactions between deer and aircraft. And so, and then it goes into talking about sort of the height of the fences that we have, the open culverts, the open fencing areas, and which then sort of makes me question, okay, well, what are we going to get out of this action by taking this? I think my thought back in May when the commission made this decision was try and make at least a small step in the right direction of eliminating those sort of hazards that are on site. But as with any decision, we have sort of the way the cost and benefits of it. And as the McCulloughs have been providing more communications for me, it's made me a little bit more aware of what their operations are. Certainly, we've had a 30-year relationship with them on site. They are a 6th-generation farm in the township. They're one of the only farms that's still existing in the township. And they've expressed a really strong desire to actually partner with the airport to address these issues. They've expressed a willingness to change the crops, to actually to reduce the amount of farming that they might do with inside the perimeter fencing, to change where the crops are growing in adjacent to the runway. So for me, at least, it raised the conversation at least made me want to revisit this conversation and make sure that maybe this might be better off to take some other steps first before moving to a situation that's pretty drastically impacting the livelihood of a long-term partner and another valued community benefit. So that's where I'm at in my thinking. I know that the McCulloughs are here tonight and able to sort of talk more about some of the opportunities that they see on this. I would certainly like to provide the opportunity for them to voice some of that and to be part of the conversation, but I don't know if others have some direct questions for them or additional thoughts on this.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on this, if I may. When I think back to, it was May that we voted to stop the agricultural activity. What I remember in front of us was a description that we have a problem, and I would agree with that. I see lots of wildlife around the airport all the time, and one recommendation for how to mitigate it, which is stop the agricultural activity. In the meantime, there's been some new thinking and maybe some new evidence. I don't know. What I would recommend, but as I just think out loud here about what I'd like to see something in writing, preferably, that I could consider to be an alternative plan to what the USDA and the EA suggested we do. And I'd be completely open-minded, and I'm completely sympathetic to the people who want to make a living on airport property. So that's my recommendation. Something that I could point to and consider an alternative, and then say which alternative I like better.
Can I ask, it seems that the one thing we do have in writing, I think, is the recommendation for a fence, and I see that they say between 8 feet with some enhancements up to like a 12-foot fence, and I know that in some areas, right, it's as low as 4 feet. Have those been considered? Is there any way that sort of cost estimates have been done on like full deer-proof fencing? I think this might have come up before, but just to refresh my memory.
No, we haven't looked into cost fencing. So the FAA recommendation, if you look in the report, the FAA recommendation for deer-proof fencing is a 10 to 12-foot fence with dual outriggers with barbed wire on top, and then a 45-degree kick fence that basically you dig into the ground, and it goes 4 feet on an angle, which keeps wildlife from digging underneath the fence. So that's their recommendation. Now they do say in there, an alternate is an 8-foot fence, but again, an 8-foot fence isn't deer-proof. And then you've got the situation as you go around the airport, especially in what I would say the populated areas along the hangar areas, especially the terminals and those type of things. You have a short 4-foot fence. You've got some gaps in the fence where at the terminal building where people walk through. And it's always been the opinion that putting up a 10 to 12-foot fence through there with razor wire is not too attractive to welcome you to the city of Ann Arbor. But we have not, there's a lot of fence out there, and upgrading to that, I think you're talking probably hundreds of thousands of dollars to upgrade to a deer-proof fence. Most of what we have out in the general perimeter is an 8-foot fence. There's no razor wire, no basically kicker piece that goes down into the ground. And that's, obviously that's been in place for some time. So, but no, getting a specific cost estimate yet, we have not done that. We haven't looked at that because it is, you're talking a very significant amount of money as well. And please understand that the recommendations in the report are, it's not one item fixes all. It's a combination of all of those things, and even all of those things won't eliminate your wildlife hazard. It will hopefully reduce it and increase the safety at the airport. And so, a number of those things we have been doing that are in the report. We've been doing the deer call, every couple of years as it gets better. We've had staff go back through and, put rebar cages on the large culverts to keep any wildlife, any large mammals from getting in through the culverts and those things. So, it's all taking steps to do these things. We're not there. We're not where we want to be yet. But I do know the fence, out of everything that's listed in that plan, the fence is going to be by far the most expensive.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for explaining that. And just, Eric, I think you might have left before we discussed it last time, but in terms of the replacement for the soybeans, you were thinking about this endophyte infected grass that is supposed to that is supposed to be least attractive to geese, right? Or is it deer? Is it sort of not attractive to anything?
No, it's least attractive to geese. Yeah. So the issue there is if we take the ag out, what are we putting back into it, and how is it maintained? Is really a a key component, because the one thing you don't want to do is replace the concern for large mammals with birds of prey. So that's the other side of that, and that's less a ground cover and more of a management issue. How, what grass height you're using and those type of things. Enough grass height to keep the voles and the field mice and the small rodents from being seen by the hawks and the eagles, but not too deep where you're getting the coyotes and those type of things.
My comments are rather limited on this. We have a report, USDA or whomever produced it, that pretty much puts the city on notice that, hey, you got a problem. That's one. Two is we have pilots and tenants that have also expressed a concern about a problem. So if you ignore addressing the problem, what type of legal exposure do we create for the legal department to bail us out in case the city gets sued? That's one thing. The other thing is that it would seem to me that it would reduce risk by reducing the type of crop that's planted, and a risk not just for the pilots, but also for the neighborhood. And another thing that just popped into my mind, and then I'm not endorsing any of these, I'm just expressing my opinion, is if the fence is the only remaining route, rather than replacing the existing lineal footage of the existing perimeter, is there an FAA airport design standard that says, hey, let's bring the fences in a little bit closer so you don't have to spend as much money, invest as much money in lineal footage? I don't know the reason for the fence perimeter as it is today. Is it just because we tried to, way back when, tried to replicate the property line? And is it necessary to have that big of a inside the fence footprint? So those are things that just came to mind. So
on the fence location, Mark, I think there are options for changing it. I think the fence location actually is one of the things that is on an airport layout plan. So the FAA would basically, if you were going to change that, you'd modify the ALP, and the FAA would weigh in if they think you're creating an issue. So I'm not familiar specifically with FAA standards for how far away you need to be from a runway or those type of things. Obviously, you got to take into account all the safety RSAs and those things, but those are really just off the end of the runway. So I would think there would be some opportunities to shrink that a little bit. But again, when you look at the layout that we have with hangars and locations of those things, you obviously need to keep those within secure areas. So really, your biggest opportunity would be along your west border, and maybe some on the south. But you're also going to want to keep your water facilities, the pump stations, within a secured fence as well.
And one last thing, sort of supported what Fred recommended, before we take another step, let's see something like, what is the written plan, the alternative plan to consider? I think that's essentially, Fred, what you said.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And that makes sense. I wonder, and I'm just looking through these recommendations here again. I just want to make sure that the recommendations certainly from the U.S. On the wildlife suggest that leave a path open for agriculture to continue within the fencing perimeter as well. They just suggest a change in crops if that were to happen. And so even the recommendations that are in front of us don't necessarily suggest that agriculture should be fully eliminated from within the fencing perimeter. It sort of addresses, kind of looking as others have mentioned, or kind of around a holistic solution to addressing this and in terms of elimination. But if others would be open for just a couple of minutes of this, feedback from David and Nathan, I think it was helpful for me to have a little bit of conversations from them with them around some of the things they're thinking about, because you might be able to provide a little bit of feedback tonight in terms of what you might want to see out of those recommendations, which ones are sparking some interest and which ones aren't. But I know we don't want to spend the next 45 minutes talking about this, but if folks would be willing to hear from them for a couple minutes, I found it useful.
I do want to throw out, I've got the assessment here in front of me, and I think it's important because I read it a little bit differently, Erica, than you, so I'm just going to read what they have on section number 3. It says, look into phasing out agriculture on airport property. Start with agricultural inside the airport operations area and move to the outside of operations area if and when possible. Corn should never be planted inside the AOA. If agriculture continues, soybeans are the least attractive of the conventional agricultural products. Immediately upon harvest, the farmer should be required to plow field under to cover as much of the leftover beans as possible. So that's specifically for those who you haven't looked at the document. That's specifically the language I'm specifically referring to agriculture in there. So, do you want me to go ahead and open up for the McCulloughs then, Erica?
If others are open to that, okay. Impose my.
Matt, I have to run. I've got to be over at Huron High School in less than a half hour. So, and I'm way over on the west side of town. So I have to go. And but when you conclude this, address what Fred had to say, and come up with a plan. And I'm sure planting season is not too far off, or at least you're buying your product for the planting season. So there is probably a timeline involved here in which, Erica, you might want to flush that out a little bit with Dave and Nathan. Right.
Well, if there's no objections, I'm going to go ahead and we'll see if we can, if Dave and Nathan, if you guys want to unmute see if you can unmute your phone and share what you'd like to, what input you can provide.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we really appreciate you guys adding us to the agenda. And I want to say thank you for that. And I appreciate the comments about, our planting season, and planning ahead is a big deal for us. So if we are going to plant any crops inside the grounds next season, we would like to know sooner than later. However, I mean, even if we go into the next meeting in January, we could make some decisions at that point. We just want to, reiterate that we understand that corn is a large hazard to the airport, for hiding deer and not necessarily geese. I believe that corn is probably a less attractive crop to geese than, low-lying grass and grasslands. And as we have been actually the contractors that have been mowing a lot of the rough areas of the runway, we can attest to the amount of birds and turkeys and geese that we chase out of those rough areas when we mow those areas. So I feel like if we do plant it to a grass after this cropping's eliminated inside the grounds, we might be trading deer for another type of animal, such as geese or birds or turkeys. And I just want to say that we're more than willing to change the boundaries of the fields, the setbacks from the runways. We can, definitely eliminate corn inside the grounds if that's what you guys would desire. We plant soybeans, wheat, and hay in our other rotational crops, all of which are more low-lying and less attractive to deer. and we'd be more than willing to do that. And then we've had side conversations about possibly helping with maintaining the perimeter fence as far as mowing or chopping or reducing some of the vegetative brush around the perimeter of the airport. It's a lot more substantial than it was, 20 years ago when we first started leasing the airport. When we first became tenants, I mean, I was a little kid at the time, but 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when we first started renting the airport, the groundskeeping crew used to actively maintain the perimeter fence and even mow on the outside perimeter of the fence. And now there's brush and trees growing up in that fence. And I have to say that the outside perimeter fence is actually a substantial fence. It's significant, and I think capable of keeping out deer in that side of that side of the airport. However, there's still some issues with the culverts and the lower fence on the north side of the airport near the hangars and the entrance of the airport. So I believe that those are, that fence should be updated, and I personally don't think that barbed wire is necessary to keep deer out. But if you put up a 10-foot fence, then, really, I think it would really make a big difference. And you wouldn't be losing, sorry about that, and you wouldn't be losing the income from the rental that we bring in. We're currently paying about $8,400 per year to the airport, which your tenants will have to absorb that cost. And we're also paying almost as much to Pittsfield Township as well, so they would be losing out on that tax income. And we feel like if we can come up to a reasonable compromise, that we could continue to rent the land, and as well as help reduce the risk to aircraft. And we're all about safety. We're in the middle of a very busy season ourselves, and everybody wants to go home at the end of the night. So we definitely understand that aspect.
For adding a few extra thoughts there.
I was wondering to tie those two together, and I appreciate the comments, David, is that Freddie kind of mentioned, and Mark said something about if you thought there were some alternatives. I wonder if if you could think of the ones and kind of based on reading the documents and where we want it to be, and kind of propose we would be willing to do this, this, and this, those kind of things for us to reconsider. I think would be an interesting, I believe I can ask the other members, that would be something that we could have and start a discussion along those routes. I don't know what the next, like out of this, as I said, it would be great to come up that, are we going to reopen and look at it and talk about it? Timing, of course, will be consideration. Will be tough for you guys, I think. But yeah, could we end up having something that we'd say, here's what this would be from you, I guess. Here's what we propose we could do along those lines. Or do you feel that you need that driven by the airport?
I think we could, definitely come up with a written plan, as one of your members suggested, and I could have that prepared for your, January 17th meeting if that is what you guys so desire. I think we could come up with a written plan, like, hey, and if you guys wish us to help with maintenance or possibly helping to reduce some of the wildlife habitat inside the grounds, obviously we'd have to work in conjunction with your maintenance department to do that, but we do have the equipment and the expertise to help remove some of the underbrush. I'm not talking about going out and tearing out 4-foot trees or any of the bigger things, but there's a lot of elderberry bushes and underbrush and just lack of maintenance there around the perimeter fence that I think if we help maintain that, it would make a big difference. And along with, possibly a larger setback from the runway, and maybe not as much farming on the south side of the runway near Project Grow, which would help, eliminate wildlife crossing the runway or, having any desire to cross the runway.
Yeah, somebody feels, that seems like a great outcome if we had something to look at, and maybe from there we could start a discussion. There are, of course, I remind there's some things that the decision did start some other decisions that we would have to consider too, but I think having something that's look at what I've talked about that is increasing rates and for tenants and things like that. But we can talk about those if we have something in our hand. I think. I don't know if Melanie, anybody else has a comment. That sounds like I'm okay going forward.
I do. I like that plan. And just to be clear, I'd love to find a way to keep Dave, you and your dad farming at the airport. But the statement that I remembered from last spring that Matt read, I find that compelling, and we just can't ignore it. So give us a reason to change our minds, and I think I'd be very open-minded to that.
Yeah, I just want to add, I'm super open-minded to it, and it feels good to revisit it. Thank you, Erica, for bringing it back up, and the rest of the committee for being open-minded. Feels like we could do multiple things besides just revisit the agriculture. Maybe increase the calling from, we let years go by. And I know just in my backyard inside Ann Arbor, there was 8 deer out there tonight, and there's just a lot of deer. So maybe we could increase that. I know there's a 4-foot fence all along the north side. I don't know how many deer jump over it, but maybe that's not an entire perimeter of fencing expense, but maybe just a portion of it. So maybe we could do multiple things in tandem.
And there may be more and more deer, I don't know, this year, because I just heard that the DNR said that their hunting licenses are down by 50%.
I know some guys that would go out there for free. I think they have to be certainly qualified to do certain things, and they would be happy to go get those qualifications. But I can tell you, inside one season, we could get some free people to call every year.
And we do that now. Now we've got a couple of people that we only allow archery hunting at the airport in season on their own tags. But we've allowed that. They've taken 3 deer out of there, within the last month or so. But yeah, we try to keep that pretty limited just because they're within the secure area. And we've had issues in the past where they've wounded a deer and then they feel they need to track it out. And the next thing you know, they're in an area that they shouldn't be in. They're in a movement area or something like that. So we've had some issues there as well. So there's a mix of success with using volunteer hunters for that. So
I should have known you've tried that already, Matt.
we've been doing, I hate to say this with 2 council members sitting there, we've been killing deer at the airport for decades. So
Matt,
for sure.
in the name of safety.
So the U.S. Oh, sorry, but just the USDA came out as part of the environmental assessment is that part of it? Yeah, I see the date is 2019, but I guess my question is, if we were to consider a proposal with some changes, could it be combined with like monitoring after that year or something, essentially making it a pilot to know whether the changes helped or not? Wondering who would do that monitoring or if that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, we don't, we have not put out infrared. USDA has used infrared cameras and those type of things, trail cameras, before they come out to do calls. So they have kind of a good idea, but they also, as part of that, they also do baiting, which they're licensed for, to draw the deer to a specific area so they can get a count before they come out and actually do the call. They typically did that for a week or 2 beforehand. We have like my staff anecdotally, has a good feel, reasonable feel for what's on the airport in regards to large mammals for deer, just because when you come in the morning, they're at certain locations, or you see them throughout the day, or pilots see them in the evening, and those type of things. So we've got, I would say, limited data as a baseline. But yeah, I mean, you could invest in some of those type of technologies to help you, do a count, to see if you're getting a reduction or not. But most of that's just really going to be visual. I mean, if you go out there, if you were out there probably an hour and a half ago, you probably could have got and looked out in the perimeters. Things are a little screwy right now with hunting season and the rut, but you probably get a good feel for what's out at the airport.
Thanks.
Just one more thought. And I know you said we've made some changes and upgrades to the fence in terms of addressing things since that 2019 report. I don't know which things have been addressed and which haven't, but it does seem problematic if we still have big holes in the fence, or if there are big areas where deer can come in on a regular basis, and the low fence out front seems to be particularly challenging if this is an area that we're really see as a safety issue. And then,
and again, it's a weight of what you want aesthetically, for there versus the efforts that you're gonna get to keep deer out as well. The idea always was that's a more active area in regards to population and people and cars and activity and those type of things. So that's going to make it, less of an area for deer to come through. But again, at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's empty. So.
And then kind of touched upon the other ripple effects of the decision last May. Obviously, there have been some fee increases. I think that's it's important to be considering, what decisions have been made in the time period since May. Ultimately, I think that those fee increases, I would hope that folks recognize that it was a desire to make sure one of things were revenue neutral on this decision, but also it was aimed at improving wildlife management and those hazards at the airport. And so if a proposal that came in January seems like something that the commission could support, I would think that additional revenue that might come in then from the farming could then be used to help bolster these activities moving forward, so that we might actually make additional progress on addressing some of these other goals. And it'll be difficult to measure progress, because it's an attractive area for wildlife, as reports and conversations noted. But anyway, thank you to everybody for being willing to revisit. This is not best practice on I'm going back and looking at a decision already made. So thank you.
Again, we want to thank you guys for your time and consideration. We will try to prepare something as long as the board's open to that for the next meeting, to maybe offer up some alternative solutions, and I can put that all in writing. And we actually have some contacts ourselves at the USDA, and maybe have them look at that and see what their suggestions might be to help reduce deer and other wildlife such as birds inside the grounds. We don't like deer either personally, because they affect our corn crop as well. So, and we just finished harvest yesterday at the airport, and I personally did see 2 deer inside the grounds. It was late at night, and I didn't see any the next morning when we finished harvest, but they are definitely a problem there. And we want to help keep the deer out as well, because it actually makes the farmland inside the grounds more attractive to us. So we are more than willing to help work with the airport, and I appreciate your guys' time. And I know that this meeting is probably longer than you guys wanted. So again, thank you for your time. And if you're open to it, we will have a presentation or something in writing for your next meeting.
That sounds great, Dave. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. And also, Erica, thanks for bringing this up for us to discuss.
I'll carry this over as unfinished business then for the January meeting, if that's acceptable, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Let's just have it on there.
Okay.
And if we could get that out sooner so that maybe people could look it over, David, before the meeting, or we could do it at the meeting too. It's not a big deal.
That'd be nice to get, yeah, the sooner we can get it, the better, so.
Yeah.
I can have it. I can try to have it to you guys by the end of the year. That way you have a copy of it in your email boxes.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, sir. Okay, any other comments on that? I think we're in a good spot. Excellent. So then for F3, which, Melanie, I'll flip it over to you to talk the good old unleaded gas.
Okay, so I know that we discussed it way back in, I think it was early 2022, about unleaded gas and the status of it and the production of it. And we had a couple gentlemen from AvFuel come over and talk to us about it. And I was recently at a meeting, it was an EAA meeting where they had about 3 guys from AvFuel come over and talk to us about the unleaded fuel that is available. And since 2022, I understand that it's more available now than it had been. And several people that I've talked to, excuse me, I caught your cold, Greg. But excuse me, several people I talked to use unleaded fuel in their aircraft, and I was at an EAA meeting, so that's probably why. But there are several places in the area that do have it, and I was just wondering, maybe we could revisit it at some point to look at what are the possibilities of. I don't know that Solo or Ace Aviation are going to be providing unleaded fuel, but Matt was wondering if it would be possible to somehow or another get unleaded fuel at the airport in a truck. And I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think that AvFuel would provide the truck or whatever. I don't know any of the logistics about that, but I do know that several people have to fly to Marshall or Toledo or a couple other different places in the area to get unleaded fuel. It's right now they're buying UL 94. I think that their AvFuel or the producers are working on having a lot more 100 low lead available for aircraft. So I don't know. I just thought it would be interesting to look into this. And what sparked this with me was that I'm on that neighborhood blog, West Next Door or whatever it's called, and couple people, I think, or at least one person that I know of, read was complaining avidly about leaded aviation fuel polluting our air in Ann Arbor. So I mean, people are becoming more aware of the lead in the aviation fuel. So I don't think we're ready for the electric planes right now, but maybe we could get some unleaded fuel. And I don't know how the logistics would be, but Matt's so good at that. You can work it out, maybe.
Yeah,
No, I just thought we should, discuss it a little bit.
I'm curious, Melanie, because I've had conversations with members of the EA over the last couple of years about this specific issue, but they're using unleaded MoGas, so 94 octane, not. No, these people they're not using. We had a discussion about that. Some people are using MoGas, and some people are not. They're using the UL 94 that doesn't have. I guess there's some. It all has to do with the distribution of the fuel and the pipes and the hoses and the tanks that it goes through, and the way that the MoGas can get contaminated. And the people I talked to who are using the UL 94
will not use MOGAS in their aircraft because they're not sure that their engines will be able to tolerate it.
Yeah, Melanie, my understanding is that
Oh, go ahead, Fred. I'm sorry.
ethanol, the possible ethanol in automotive,
Ethanol plus other contaminants in
Yeah.
the truck.
and to use unleaded gas with no ethanol is the issue.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any 100 unleaded, 100 octane unleaded gas. I mean, they've developed, there's a couple of products out there. There's the GAMI product and the Swift product.
Yeah.
And the GAMI is a drop-in product. So you can use that. You could literally pour 1,000 gallons of that into a 5,000 gallon tank, and it would mix just fine, and it would perform just fine.
Mhm.
But I'm not aware that there's any manufacturer producing that in distribution quantities yet.
I
last
can
conversation I was
check
asking
on it for you, Matt, but I was under the impression that I may be wrong, so I don't know. I could check.
I think that's with Mike Cormos from AvFuel. He may have been one of the people that was at the presentation the other day.
Yeah, I can't remember the guys' names, but
the flip side, the other fuel thing, and because we've had the same request from the EA about having a tank and those type of things, and it really boils down to quantity. Who's going to use it? Who has the appropriate certifications on their engine to use it?
Not everybody needs an STC apparently, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, some of the EA, especially a lot of the EA stuff, the experimental stuff. But I kind of let them know, the EA, if they wanted to do it, kind of what they needed to go through to get a tank in there. Fred, your group is going through that right now.
Yeah, I could say a little bit about that if you want.
Putting in a new tank, so it may be worth having if there are people at EA. We're not in a position. I mean, because you got a couple of issues. You've got the tank. You've got the tank, and somebody's got to own the tank and insure it, and those types of things. You've got to be careful with the environmental issues, though. The new tanks these days are double-walled concrete and those type of things. It's one of the reasons we don't do self-serve fuel at the airport, is because of our relationship to the Three Fires Aquifer, that we're in a wellhead protection area. And then it really is just the volume and the quantity. That are you going to be able to move enough of this product that you can pay, because somebody's got to dispense it, and you either have to have a fixed tank and people come to it, or you have to rent a truck, and you've got operating and maintenance costs and those type of things on a truck from AvFuel.
Sure.
So it's not something that it's something that we've looked at in the past at the request of the EA, and told them, hey, we can provide you information if it's something that you feel there's enough of your members, because like you said, a lot of it is the experimental side of things that are using either MOGAS or the 94 UL. But I have not seen anybody really have an idea that there's going to be enough volume to put it at. I mean, at some point there may be, but yeah, what they're talking about, really, the unleaded product that they're talking about is a commercially available unleaded product versus the 100 octane avgas, unleaded avgas that's being out there. And the issue, at least the latest I've heard from AvFuel, which is, probably in September at the conference, was it's still the same issue of AvFuel refineries are a very, very small percentage, because avgas as a product in the United States is a very, very small percentage of the fuel being used in the product. And so trying to get a manufacturer to go through the expensive reconfiguration of the refinery to produce unleaded 100 octane, let's say GAMI, it's chicken and the egg type of thing. People aren't buying the STCs for their engines to be able to fly it because they can't get the product, and I don't know what these STCs are costing. My understanding of that process, you guys know better than I do, is you have to, every aircraft has to purchase an STC, I think is how it worked. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's my understanding, which isn't a perfect understanding, but we at Michigan Flyers, we burn on the order of, and I'm just round numbers, 40 or 50,000 gallons of gas a year, and we are getting a new tank because our tank's too old. And we would, not just politically, but our members would love to be burning unleaded gas. We would, everyone wants it. But our understanding, and the STCs, you're right, our Cessna engines, we have a fleet of 11, and our Cessna engines would be something on the order of $200 a piece, but we'd do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But right now, my understanding, and I'm sorry I missed the EAA presentation, but there just isn't a distribution network that can provide us with the kinds of gas, the amounts of gas that we would need to make that leap, which we would do quickly if we could, we don't want to stop flying for any length of time. That the commercial availability is being rolled out. I understand in California, where there's maybe a little more political pressure to get unleaded gas going. And it's kind of we were in conversation with AvFuel to be maybe a pilot project for them to roll out unleaded fuel in this area, and that didn't go anywhere. So we're kind of waiting. It's like we're ready to go and would love to burn unleaded gas when it's available, but it's just not available in the kind of volumes that would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
The general feeling is what's going to force it is the EPA. So the EPA has been studying this for years, and are always not too far from issuing a ruling where they're basically going to outlaw lead in aviation fuel by a certain date. And the general feeling is until that happens, we're still going to be kind of stuck in this chicken and the egg thing. So it's going to be the EPA that says, hey, by 2026, there's going to be no more leaded aviation fuel in the United States. Because the GAMI product, they have got most of the certifications that they need from the engine manufacturers. I think they've got 90% or more, last I heard, of the engines that are out there that are certified to run on their product. But again, people that don't want to, it's going to be more expensive, at least initially, unleaded fuel is going to be, so the people that don't necessarily care about if they burn leaded or unleaded, they're not going to be in a big hurry. I appreciate, the Flyers' willingness to say, hey, $200 an engine for the certification, we'll do that in a heartbeat, if we could get the product. But kind of the general feeling is once the EPA comes in and says, yes, you're going to do it, it's really not going to push the refinery or the distribution side until they come in. And behind the scenes, the word is that the EPA was delaying it until they found a product that would work. So, there's some consensus or some thought that now that they have a product that works, and what's nice is it's clean as a drop-in product. They can pump it through the same pipelines as other aviation gas. They can haul it in the same tankers as other aviation gas. It can be in the above and below ground fuel tanks. It can be in your own tank in your aircraft. So you got 50 gallons of old avgas, and you put in 50 gallons of unleaded avgas. It'll still burn fine. It won't impact your certification. So that's the nice thing about the GAMI product. The Swift product, which is being used more in California, is not a drop-in product. So they have to have a separate tank for it. You have to make sure your fuel in your aircraft is completely drained out before you put the Swift product in and those things. But as I think, Fred, you're right. I think California has put in, is forcing the issue a little more. But the general feeling is it's really not going to convert until the EPA says, here's your date. By 2026, you're using unleaded fuel.
Interesting. I had information that 100 low lead replacement isn't scheduled till 2030. I hope.
I mean, the product is there. I mean, it's
Yeah.
been there. I mean, it got FAA approval, I think September of 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That sticks in my mind. But again, it's the distribution side, it's the refinery side that, to expect somebody to convert the refinery over, and people may or may not use it, because they can still save $1 a gallon on 100 low lead versus unleaded.
And just the leaded fuel is so expensive right now. I can't imagine how much the unleaded fuel would be.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, if there's somebody out there, I'd be happy to have conversations about unleaded. We're not gonna bring it in because, again, from the airport's perspective, we're not set up to do that. But we have an arrangement with the flyers, and like for their fuel, they lease space for a tank, and they own the tank, and they insure the tank, and those type of things. So it's not unheard of at the airport. If if somebody wanted to approach us about that, we'd be more than happy to sit down and make sure they know what it takes to do that, and the requirements and those type of things. And if they feel there's volume there that they can do it in, then again, we'd be more than happy to sit down and talk to them about it.
Well, thanks for all the information, Matt. I really appreciate it.
It's something, I mean, it's something that is, it's wonderful having a resource like AvFuel literally on your airfield.
Yeah. Really. Yeah.
And, it's an important issue. It's an important issue for the city, for the community, and just the nation as a whole. Even though, again, avgas is a very, very small percentage, it would be nice to be able to make that transition and eliminate that. Even if it's a little bit of lead, anything you can take out is better.
Do you get complaints from people who live in the area that there's, about the leaded fuel, low lead?
Only when we have a public comment period for the EA. We got lots of them then, but in general, no, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it, people don't realize that they're using that there's still low lead fuel available out there. And and in general, many people are apathetic to lead, and it's you're talking a very, very small segment of the fuel burn, or fuel being burnt as aviation fuel.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say just aviation fuel, but 100 low lead. I mean, and we do, I guess if I look at our report, I mean, we did, so far this year, we've done I think I'd have a report available that showed that. I mean, this year we've done about 130,000 gallons of avgas, which is low lead, and then 60,000 gallons of Jet A, which is an unleaded product, obviously.
Excellent.
Thanks for the info. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting, and maybe it is coming up, Matt, maybe for our in-house meeting, we think about AvFuel, just saying, where are we? Kind of how's it going with distribution, which I think is the one. Because I see some flight schools, people who have big volume and can do a tank like the flyers are talking about trying or doing it actually. Okay. Got the schedule. Oh, now, so any other on that? Melanie, is that good for the unleaded? Yep.
No, that's great.
Okay, good. Items for next agenda. For our next meeting, I think we are going to have one to talk, hopefully the proposal about farming inside the fence or something along those lines, some other things. I don't know if
Yeah,
there's-
I think for unfinished business, we'll have the noise concerns, the airport rules and regulations, and the agricultural activity. And then the only other new item that I have right now would be our annual election of officers.
Yeah, so start thinking about that. Anything else?
Oh, geez. For next meeting, we may very well have the EA for review for this body.
Excellent. Yeah, because we're looking at early December or sometime in December, maybe.
Yeah, for the notice of availability, and I got to figure out how best to convey the report to you guys. Not sure if we want to just give you the link to the airport website and let you review or download what you want, or provide you flash drives for all 3,600 pages, or.
I think we pass it around. Each one of us reads a page out loud to each other.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
I think we're going to need a few more meetings then.
Well, for January, I won't be here, but if I'm awake at 1 o'clock in the morning and my phone and I have Wi-Fi wherever I am, I'll try to join.
Oh, Greg, you're muted.
Thank you. There's no other items. Thanks, Chris. Okay, so next meeting scheduled for Wednesday, January 17th, 5/15, 2024. Please call Matt up if you're unable to make it, hopefully by that Monday of that week, just to let us know. Our last is another opening for public comments. If anybody like to speak, again, this is just raise your hand, *9. Now I know what it is on your phone, and Matt will spot the phone number, and you get 3 minutes to speak. Okay.
Not seeing any additional comment, Mr. Chair.
Good deal. Okay, entertain a motion for adjournment.
A second.
There we go. Only 7. All in favor say aye.
I
Any opposed? Then ayes have it. That's it, folks. Really thanks everybody for sticking around.
thank you.
Everyone.